My name's Philip Attar, and this is the first video of me sharing after a 9-month sabbatical, realizing as a spiritual mentor, life coach, men's coach, and couples coach after 11 years as a mentor that I was not embodied in the work I was sharing and teaching, and I lacked integrity in the work. This is the first video of me sharing that unfolding, what's happened after 9 months sabbatical, 6 months completely off all client work, 9 months off social media. I had to delete my posts on social media on Instagram with 130,000 followers. August 2025, when I had this big realization, along of course with the reflections of my wife Amanda Lee, that I just was not embodied in the work I was sharing, especially at the time regarding couples, people saving their marriages and union, when my marriage and union was still suffering from a lot of challenge because of my lack of integrity, because of my lack of embodiment, because of my own lack of ownership, accountability, and responsibility as a man. And this is about that entire unfolding as I'm here to surrender my will, my conditioned will, to the will of creation, to surrender my will to natural order. And how essentially I've lived a false image, not just through my 11-year career as a spiritual mentor and teacher, but even beforehand, and especially beforehand. It all started earlier on, of course, throughout my 17, 18-year career as an art director and creative director in New York City in fashion. All of it was a false image, just completely disembodied and living out of the reality of the present moment. I was constantly projecting, constantly creating an image of a false self to the world, to my colleagues, to the fashion image industry. Of course, it is an image industry. One could say, of course, that perpetuated it, to my family even. And it even stretched out into my spiritual mentorship career, which the whole path of a spiritual life path, a path devoted to the will of creation, to surrendering our will to creation, that path requires absolute devotion of us walking that path. And I did not walk that path. So let me begin. I'm not sure if I'm going to edit this video entirely, so just be patient if I have some ums or pauses. I want to just be able to flow without too many or without any edits, ideally, just to get a sense of where I actually am and why this is related to us surrendering our will to creation, surrendering our will to God. Again, we don't use, Amanda Lee and I don't use the term God anymore just because of the religious context, but we speak of the will of creation, the will of natural order of all of life on this planet, and how there is an algorithm, intelligence, a living intelligence of life that's already unfolding, and that we've separated ourselves from. Now, we'll go on about that another time, just about the sabbatical and the reason for it. Again, I lacked embodiment. At the time, I was teaching men and couples how to save their marriage and union, realizing that I was actually teaching from a place where I'm still learning, where I wasn't embodied fully in that truth. My marriage was still challenged. My marriage was still failing. I was, as a man, not taking full ownership and responsibility and accountability, which I was also asking my clients to. I was still acting like a victim, defensive, and deflecting responsibility and pushing my weight onto my wife. Again, teaching men to do the opposite of that. And I was still suffering from my own patterns impacting my marriage. And I had to take a huge break last year after sensing into it, after realizing, of course, the deficits of my marriage, after a tremendous amount of reflection from my wife. If you followed me or you're aware of this path, you know that my wife Amanda Lee is a surrendered woman, meaning she has surrendered her conditioned will to live now and embody natural order as a woman that is interdependent on her union with a man, not codependent and not independent, but interdependent as we're naturally designed as a species to be interdependent on my self-leadership, interdependent on my self-leadership and natural order through the will of creation, not through the conditioned will, the weaker will of man, where men take, and I would take, should take, 100% ownership for how we lead our lives, and how we lead our lives in connection to this planet, to this earth, to community, to ultimate responsibility with our wives, and how we create the safety and protection of our lives and the containers and the people that they're interdependent on us, like our wives and children. They're interdependent on our leadership and our protection, and how I failed to do that, and still up to even this week have continued to fail to do that. So this video is the first video where I'm sharing the unfolding and humbly just sharing where I am. I'm no longer going to project an idea of where I think I am or should be in order to teach falsely as a fraud, falsely from where clients want me to be. I'm no longer going to share things for validation, as I got caught up on Instagram with hundreds of thousands of views, 50,000 views, millions of views, comments, 130,000 followers. I got caught up on creating content for that algorithm that perpetuated my false image, and I was that machine that fed the machine. And I'm no longer going to do things for validation or for a false sense of identity. And I'm no longer going to do things to sell anything either. This is the first video where I'm going to embody where I am fully, even in my failure as a man, my continued failures as a husband, my failures in my embodiment and what I did teach, my embodiment as someone who taught how to let go, let God, but I never actually let go myself. I never surrendered my own conditioned will. I was utilizing my will all over the place, and for profit. And I'm here to take full ownership and responsibility, knowing now that as I do that, I'm now merging with the will of order, natural order of creation's will, again, of God's will, quote unquote. We don't use the term God. We're not religious. It's not about God or Jesus. It's about the will of how the living intelligence of life moves through life, through its own will. And we're here as vessels of that will. And I have failed to embody that, yet I attempted to teach it even 2 years ago and 1 year ago. So I'll continue. Again, I might have to pause every now and then, so just forgive me. We're gonna flow through this like it's a normal conversation. Like a conversation between two people, not just edited to make you pay attention falsely and manipulate you. So let me take a breath. I've failed. Again, I'm not being self-deprecating. I'm realizing this, that as I take ownership of my failure as a husband, I've been a terrible husband. Since Amanda Lee and I got married 2.5 years ago, I realized I married a surrendered woman, but I didn't know what that actually meant. A woman devoted to the will of creation. I just found her beauty, her essence beautiful, her expression beautiful, her truth beautiful. And even when I met her 3 years before we got married 6 years ago, I even recognized the essence that she embodied, and I even extracted that essence and started teaching that even with my clients back then, 6 years ago. And again, I've been a spiritual mentor and teacher for 11 years. I started teaching even what I was sensing into through her embodiment. Not that she was teaching me, just through her embodiment. But again, I didn't embody it. I didn't walk the path that she was devoted to walking. And I started speaking about surrendering your will to God, living in the living intelligence of creation beyond our mind's conditioned will. And I was just essentially a very good speaker. I worked in media and advertising and branding in New York City for 18 years as a creative director and art director. So I developed a lot of skill speaking in media, working for brands like Vogue and Swarovski and Interview Magazine and Apple and a bunch of other brands over the years. And even in that career, I just built one false image after one false image, never built anything on the root of a real foundation of reality. I'll go on about that career another day, but that entire 18-year, 17-year career was built on false image after false image after false image, and somehow I got away with it. Well, not really, because every 3 or 4 years I had to switch jobs, because eventually people realized maybe he's not as embodied as we thought he was. So I'm admitting that now after all of these years, and I'm admitting that, recognizing that I brought that into my spiritual mentorship career, which is the greatest misstep, sin, the greatest piece of trauma to bring into even a spiritual mentorship career, when the whole point is to let go of that. And of course, be humble and recognize it, but I wasn't humble all these years. I was speaking as if I knew truth. I was speaking as if I walked truth, and I didn't. And when I say truth, I mean there's an ultimate truth in life that is beyond my perception of truth, your perception of truth, someone else conditioned perception of truth. There's an underlying truth of how the living intelligence of natural order, living intelligence of creation, creates and co-creates natural order on this planet and in our multiverse. There's a wave of life force that moves through us all, and our minds have now, I extracted from that to teach spiritual and religious principles without even walking the path. I did start somewhat humbly. I'll say that when I healed my Graves' disease, or regulated my Graves' disease in 2012, where I was cross-eyed and bulging eyes 7 millimeters from my eye socket. But even then, I regulated enough to gain some intelligence and truth from it. But I should have continued to walk the path deeper, but I just extracted the codes, the intelligence, and I immediately built an Instagram following starting in 2015 and began my spiritual teaching career prematurely. Even back then, I should have continued to go on the healing path and go even deeper and dive into the true embodiment of what surrendering your will is. But all I did was regulate my body to heal my eyes somewhat, like let's say 70%. But then I still continued to use my will to this day. But yet I would teach people to surrender their will, but I was still utilizing my conditioned will. When I realized this last year, of course, like I said, I had to delete the posts on Instagram, stop working, stop my client work, and just live and walk what I was preaching. And it wasn't until I got these, after 3 years, 2.5 years in marriage to Amanda Lee, I started to, obviously in the reflection of my wife, start to see myself. If you've been following me, or you're aware of this path, you know, as a man, this is for the men and the women, of course, but the men, your wife is a mirror of you. It's not that both of us are independent partners. I've sensed into the reality and the truth that a surrendered woman is and especially a woman like Amanda Lee, who's surrendered her will to creation, she's a 100% reflection of me and my embodiment, or my lack of embodiment. And immaturely, I honestly couldn't take seeing my reflection. I didn't want to see how insane I was sharing intelligence that I wasn't embodied in. I didn't want to see how disembodied I was. I didn't want to see how disgusting that was. I didn't want to see how everything was built on a false image. I thought I was a man of integrity. Everyone thought, and I got validation on Instagram and social media, everyone thought I am a good guy. He does know the intelligence. He must be embodied. But when the occasional person would catch something, or a client would catch something, or Amanda Lee would catch it all the time, and I would see my own reflection throughout all that unfolding, I didn't want to see how disembodied I was. I didn't want to admit it. And I just acted like a victim to my wife's reactions to my lack of embodiment. And even though I was teaching the truth of natural order meaning it's not that men dominate and lead women, it's that men create this safe, protective container for our planet. We're here to protect the planet. And in protecting the planet, we protect the land. In protecting the land, we protect the people and the communities. Protect the people in the communities, we protect women and children. And I failed all the above, and especially in my marriage, I failed to protect my wife from my own conditioning, from my own reactivity, from my own violent abuse, physically, emotionally, physical and emotional abuse. And I was constantly, in the beginning of our marriage, violently reactive and emotionally reactive to my wife reacting to me being out of order. And it took me years until now, frankly, to realize that the reality of natural order means that as a man, as a woman is more vulnerable on our interdependent relationship and more vulnerable on my leadership, Amanda Lee was more vulnerable on my leadership and my inability to lead myself in natural order, as I was teaching it especially, was completely out of order. And me responding to her response, me responding to her response to me, I'm out of order over here. Like if I'm responding to her and she's responding to me and I'm the one that's out of order, because this is the natural order of life, like creation's will, A man surrenders to creation's will. A woman surrenders to creation's will on her own, but then only surrenders to the will, creation's will in her man. My wife, Amanda Lee, of course, like any surrendered woman of authenticity, of devotion, will not surrender, will not devote herself to a man out of order or in his conditioning. So she's been a tremendous gift for me to see myself, a tremendous gift for me to have immense clarity to turn over. Imagine having a love, a partner, a wife that can actually see you so clearly that you can turn over every shadow in your life. She's an immense gift, and I didn't treat her that way. I treated her like the devil, like constantly in conflict, constantly having problems, constantly in lack and scarcity, not realizing that I created the lack and scarcity, not realizing that I was the one out of order, not surrendered to creation's will. I was still in my conditioning, and I was the one that was out of order, because again, men are here to protect the women. I can't act defensive or like a victim to the woman and family I am here to protect. And biologically, that's how we're built. So if anyone wants to argue with that, good luck. Like, biologically as men, we're built to protect this planet and our women, and we haven't. I've self-protected. I act like the victim still to this week. I've been deflective, defensive still to this week. Still not truly admitting and holding myself accountable to move beyond my will and take full ownership and responsibility for my embodiment as a man and my path to surrender my will to creation, to natural order. So as I've sensed into this all this time, I'm sharing these videos. This is the first video of many, where I'm now going to share from a place of absolute embodiment and where I am humbly. I'm not going to sell anything right now. I'm not going to offer anything. I do not want anything from my past conditioning to filter on into this present moment. This present moment is going to be built solely on my admission, truth, humbleness, honesty, transparency of where I actually am. No longer projecting a false image ahead of me. No longer projecting a false sense of self to sell something or be validated in some identity that I create on social media. I want to be raw and real with where I am, no matter how terrible that looks. Right now I'm camping because after everything unfolded, I'll do another video specifically on this, but after 9 months of closing our business intentionally, knowing I needed to feel and embody the truth of who I am, it took me too long, and the business obviously failed. The offering was not authentic. I will not and could not start unless I was in integrity. Only now am I sensing to the truth of my ownership and responsibility. And this is the first video of my fruit moving in and walking that path. And because of that, I have demolished our business. And I'm going to be very transparent. I'm broke. I'm homeless. We've now had to leave our home. Amanda Lee's staying with a dear friend. I'm camping in the backcountry in the Pacific Northwest until I get myself, move myself, allow myself to be forged through the will of creation. I'm not going to get myself out of this. You are now witnessing in real time me not using my will to get out of this, me not using my will to sell programs and make money that goes against natural order. I will not move forward, quote unquote, in sin, in misstep. I will only move forward in integrity. And me truly walking the path I was invited to walk since I even began to heal my Graves' disease in 2012. And when I began teaching in 2015, I should have began walking this path now humbly in 2015, and I didn't. It took me 11 years to get the hint. 3 years, 2.5 years in marriage with Amanda Lee, degrading my marriage, degrading my wife through the process, through a constant reflection and pain and suffering, of me constantly acting like a victim to my lack of embodiment as a man, as a leader, to self-lead myself and devote myself to protecting my wife, to protecting natural order. I would always, I consistently failed as a man to uphold order in my own life, and that living a life as a false image caught up to me. Living a life as a fraud in that false image caught up to me. Living a life disembodied has caught up to me. Living a life disembodied with an embodied wife has essentially shown me the mirror of who I am and slapped me directly in the face. Not literally, but just allowed me to see what kind of man I really am at the core. And again, I'm not being self-deprecating. I'm not doing this for any validation. I do not want anything from the public. I'm doing this knowing that this is my way out. Men like myself have not taken ownership and responsibility for what we did to this world, this planet, to our women, to our children. We have not taken responsibility. And I'm seeing the correlation of me not taking ownership and responsibility with my wife, Amanda Lee, with the clients I did work with, and none of the men want to take responsibility and ownership for their role, their biological role in natural order, where they actually initiate and create this safe, protective container for their home and family. And I'm seeing the correlation between me not doing that, my clients not doing that, and men not doing that in this entire world. And right now, this video and my next videos, I'm not here to teach anything. I'm just going to humbly share where I am, knowing that my embodiment is the only way out. My embodiment in reality, where consciousness, me, can see myself truly, where I can feel every nuanced frequency in my body of ownership and accountability to completely dissolve any ripple of victimhood in my cells that still exist that would impact and harm my wife. And I will only move forward in ownership responsibility of natural order to ensure that I protect my wife, that I co-create with the living intelligence of creation through the will of creation, because I'm in the reality of what is living, what I was teaching for years and I never embodied, in the reality of what is alive and natural and here without my conditioned mind's manipulation or control. I'm going to actually walk the path. And that's the only way out of where I am. Again, humbly, I am broke. And I'm not asking for anything. I am literally homeless. My wife is staying with a friend, separated from me for now, knowing that this is my path out. And I could have prevented this 9 months ago if I actually embodied where I was, but I didn't want to admit it. I could have prevented this 11 years ago if I actually walked the path of natural order and began to walk it humbly before teaching. And I didn't. And I created a false career ever since. And this is me beginning at the age of 49. I admit that's embarrassing to say. I'm almost 50 years old in a few months. And I'm just beginning to see how I've been out of order my entire life. How I've lived a false image my entire life. How that impacted my mentorship career and my marriage. This is my second marriage, impacted my first marriage and this marriage. My last marriage, the marriage I am devoted to for life with Amanda Lee. And I falsely started teaching things prematurely before I was embodied. So, as of this video, there's no offering. I'm not selling anything. There's no link. I'm just going to be where I am. And as I merge with the truth of where I am and who I am fully, I'm free. And as I merge with where I am fully, this embodiment forges and creates the next fully, without me creating my reality. I can now live through the living intelligence of creation to co-create my reality in natural order, in a natural way of being, untethered to the conditioned mind, as long as I continue in devotion to be honest with where I am and who I am in myself and others. So, if you finish this video, feel free to subscribe. I'll have obviously more videos, multiple days, multiple times a week, more long form videos like this as well, to sense into an unedited where I actually am. And if there's reflection for you, beautiful. Again, I'm not here to teach you. I'm not here to mentor you. I'm here to just be myself and allow this to unfold the way it should unfold for all men and all of humanity. and everything will be naturally corrected in natural order as we continue to be humble and truly know where we are. Much love. I'm Philip Attar. I'll see you in the next video.